Okay, why don't you start by just introducing yourself? Tell me a little bit about your background and what brings you to the Esri User Conference.
Wonderful. So I'm Amy Bunszel. I'm the EVP of our AEC solutions at Autodesk. And so what that means is I'm responsible for all of our solutions targeted at architecture, engineering, and construction. That includes our fairly new construction cloud offering, as well as Revit, AutoCAD, Civil 3D. So crossing the barriers between design and make for the AEC industry.
Okay, but we're at the Esri User Conference, and that's because Autodesk and Esri are continuing their
Yes.
ongoing partnership and doubling down and making it a tighter partnership. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, about 7 years ago, we realized, hey, it was too hard for our customers to kind of connect, the GIS mapping, real world context with the design environments, and so we started on a journey 7 years ago, and now over the last couple of years, we've delivered some pretty significant product integration. So data's starting to flow back and forth, and now we're on a mission really to help educate our joint customers, that it's possible to really aggregate things together so that you have all that rich real world context you get from Esri, plus things like the buildings you might get from Revit or the infrastructure you might get out of Civil 3D.
So for those who aren't completely familiar with the Esri Autodesk partnership, can you talk a little bit details about which products are working with each other and how they fit together these days?
Sure. So one of the things we released together was something called GeoBIM. So this is a way to connect ArcGIS to the construction cloud. So the data that's in our construction cloud can flow into their cloud. And what that means again is people can aggregate and contextualize all that information together. And then we've also worked to get all of the base maps and the layers and the Esri data into the authoring environments. So for example, in Forma, which is our new industry cloud for AEC, you can start your design by bringing in all of your Esri information. You can bring in, if you want to know where the fire stations are, if you want to know where all the parcels are, you can bring all that information in, as well as, of course, buildings and vegetation, and start your design in the context of the real world. And so that's kind of percolating throughout the whole portfolio.
Okay, so these are very large companies with large user bases. How are you guys helping each other? What are the ways that this kind of reinforces positivity for both sides of the equation?
Well, actually, one of the ways we're helping each other is through our customers. So we're partnering with our customers to start telling stories of what's possible by bringing this technology together. So I can give you a couple of examples. Volker Vessels, which is a customer of ours that's working on the Schiphol airport, they're doing a project that is actually behind customs. So they need as much kind of contextual information as they can because they can't access the site very freely. So they have done a lot of point cloud scanning. They brought together all of the historical data they have on the airport, as well as from both Autodesk and Esri, and now using ArcGIS as a portal, everyone working on the project can see all the data they have on the project. So that's helping them, have share information so they're able to hit their schedules, more quickly, and to, quite frankly, be able to minimize, how they're accessing the site.
Okay, so for those who, I'd like it from both sides, if they're typically the Autodesk user, what are some of the differences they have to do to kind of incorporate the Esri platform? If they're the Esri user, what are some of the ways that they can best incorporate Autodesk? Specific as possible.
Well, what's interesting there is you asked how we were working together, and that's exactly how we're working together, because a lot of in our customer base, a lot of those organizations are kind of siloed. So, the GIS people might not know very much about BIM and vice versa. So part of what we're doing with the storytelling, and we're also going to be building some training so that people know what to do. So one example is we had a presentation yesterday from Parsons, and so they brought together Revit, Civil, and Esri data. But for one good example is on the Revit model, they really only needed the walls and the solar panels. So they needed something that would give them the envelope of the building. But if you don't build your layers and information in Revit the right way, you might not be able to get that information out of there easily. So thinking more purposefully about how data will be used downstream when you start the designs helps you kind of integrate the tools.
Okay, so if they're not an avid Revit user, how do they overcome the challenges of if it's not right? Do they need an expert to kind of help them with that if they're from the GIS side, or what's the smoothest way to keep
I think
everybody on the same page?
well, the smoothest way is partially us helping out by enabling customers to deliver, data in a more granular fashion, and that's a big part of the Autodesk data strategy, is to make sure it's not you have to pass over everything to do the interoperability. And so a lot of that is workflows that we've created for the customers so they can purposely select what they want to bring into the environments.
How do I start incorporating these things? What is the process
Oh, yeah,
like there? Like say I'm an Autodesk longtime user, and you know what, I want to get some more of Esri's in my things. How do they get started? What are some tips on starting the process?
Well, what I have seen work well for customers is really just to dive in and to bring someone who has the GIS knowledge and the BIM knowledge together. And one of the challenges too is kind of to work with your IT team to make sure you've got the right licenses for everything. And then it's really it's as simple on the Esri side in some cases of just logging in and then searching for the information you need and then surfacing that. So it tends to be a partnership, and I'd say our best customers think about process and outcome, and what am I trying to figure out, and then the people put their heads together to figure out what data to bring together.
So our audience is going to be typically coming from the Autodesk AEC side. What are the main or popular benefits that they're getting by starting to work with Esri and adding to their portfolios?
I would say the biggest benefit is that real world context. And so what that will help them do is make decisions with data and information about their projects, as opposed to waiting to see how things turn out when they actually see that information later on. One example is if you're working on, let's say, roads or train tracks, if you will, you have to kind of cut and fill the dirt around that, and so you can plan all that in advance if you bring the Esri data together with the Autodesk data. You can also figure out if you can bring your equipment in, whether it's maintenance equipment or construction equipment. You can plan all of that out in advance and minimize disruption on the neighborhood, the environment, all the stakeholders on the project.
And what is going on the behind the scenes in the Esri Autodesk partnership? Like, how are you guys working as companies? What is their internal partnership like from a corporate side?
So the works in many different ways. I would say we have joint marketing going on. We have, again, we're partnering to support customers to do these workflows and then do the storytelling. We're also working together on training as well. And then we actually support each other by coming to each other's conferences as well. We're hosting some of the AEC specific events here at the Esri conference, and they'll do some things with their customers at our conference.
So do users, they feel like they're putting models onto an Esri platform, or do they feel like they're adding GIS to an AEC platform? Or
it goes both ways. Yeah, okay. It's very cool. It goes both ways. In particular, in AutoCAD now, you can bring in a lot of the base maps, and people are actually using AutoCAD now to edit that information because that's the tool that they might know the best, and then they can send that back into the Esri database.
So the user interface can be whatever they're most familiar with. They don't have to pick one or the other to be like the standard thing that they're looking at on their computer.
It depends really on the workflow that you're getting at, but in many cases, you're able to bring the data to where you're most comfortable working.
We've got a little bit of time until the Autodesk University coming up. What are some of the things that you're working on with this partnership to build forward so that you'll be introducing and promoting it at your own event?
So deepening the integrations is kind of a primary thing, and then mostly it's the storytelling, I think, and the education, because the vast majority of our customers probably don't really know what's possible, and so that's a big part of what these great user events are good for, is honing the knowledge and information that we can share.
When you go to these events, do you feel like it's a tough sell, or do these people kind of pretty quickly realize that this is good for them and it's worth the effort? Or how much tugging do you have to do?
Yeah, I think it depends. There has to be some value in it for the customer, and it really does. It varies. So these days we find that a lot of our customers are trying to deliver better sustainable outcomes on their projects. So if they don't understand how the environment is going to influence their project and how their project is going to influence the environment, it's really hard for them to achieve those goals. And then they also need to deal with their stakeholders. So the visualization of a map with the 3D data involved that comes from our tools helps them engage the community, the client, in a much better way, so that everybody has a kind of a common picture about what's going to be delivered.
So what are your personal goals from this event? What are you hoping to achieve just in your few days here in San Diego? And then what might they be back in San Diego for your own
Yeah.
conference.
Well, a couple of the things are to just deepen my relationship with the Esri team. I mean, I've been to Redlands a few times, obviously seen them at other meetings, but to come here and see, how they communicate with their entire customer base and not just the AEC portion has really been eye-opening for me. One thing I learned more about was a lot of the field workflows that they support in their software, which is also really important to our construction customers. And so I think by being here, and we've got about 30 people here, we'll be able to create new touch points and more value more quickly.
And just personal perspective, like what do you think about all the things that you've seen here?
Well, it's very inspiring. Autodesk has always been, a purpose-oriented company, and Esri is clearly that, to the core. So it's great to see the people from National Geographic Society speaking. The impacts that some of their customers have are quite tug on your heartstrings.
Yes, I found that they've got a very passionate user base.
Yes.
There's a lot of things, and an awful lot of them are for like the greater good of the world, as
Yes.
opposed to business applications or things that we're in the infrastructure space. It's about creating a thing. There's so many people here that are doing things for people.
Yes, and there's a big focus on equity, which is kind of going back to sort of the whole what data can you bring together, thinking about the world or your patch of the world and the people that live there and the demographics of those people and just we had one whole conversation about bus shelters and with the way the climate is changing, right? You can't be standing on the street corner in 100-degree weather with no shelter waiting for a bus. And so how do you understand what your problem is and then prioritize fixing those problems?
Okay, so those people that are doing that typically with like the Esri mapping, how do you say, hey, we can actually improve that by adding a little bit of like an Autodesk or the AC side of things? What benefit will those types of people get?
There's a water company in Davidson Water, and they have a huge problem with leaks in their water system from their PVC piping, and about 75% of their system is PVC piping. And so they have it all mapped out. They can visualize it in Esri, but now they have to figure out where to start. Like, where do I start doing these repairs? I can't do them all overnight. So using our water software and some AI that we've developed, they're able to prioritize like how to start doing these repairs so that they can have the maximum impact on the most important places first as they go through the project. And that's a big point here, I think, is that all these towns and cities and states and governments have budgets, and figuring out how to deploy the budget in the priority order where it has the biggest impact on the population is how we can partner together using data.
As far as the Esri Autodesk partnership, do you feel that it's best to kind of combine the platforms and everyone kind of stay in their own worlds, I guess, business? Or do you ever see like Autodesk incorporating some of those tools directly into their products, for example?
Well, we kind of already have some of that happening, where we have things that are kind of embedded. That's one of the nice things about modern software development now, is you can kind of do that. The other thing that is really helpful is federation of data, so that the data can live in the system where it was authored, so you can continue to update it, but it can appear in the representation that you need in the other systems. So there's quite a lot of technology that enables us to partner together like that.
And as far as on the user's end, do they need anything special? Is this all just plug and play software applications?
Yep. And they're all customizable too. So I think they plug and play, and then if you have some really super special use case, you can customize on top.
I guess what can we look forward to perhaps at Autodesk University that you might be sharing then? Is there any way you can do a sneak peek? And if you can't, that's okay.
Right, so Autodesk University is coming up in October to be here in San Diego, and one of the big focus areas for us at AU will be to carry on some of the messaging we delivered last year around our cloud environments, so Fusion, Forma, and Flow. We'll of course be talking more about AI and how we can use AI to support our customers so that they can get more value out of the capabilities. And from an Esri perspective, a lot of those things overlap, right? The more we can do with data, AI, and advance these cloud platforms, the more we can also deepen our relationship with them.
Just a question I've been wondering, is there a particular reason why you're coming to San Diego in this upcoming event, or is it coincidence, or is there a strategic reason?
It's a huge coincidence. We decided a few years ago to sort of take AU on the road and move to different cities, and there's actually only so many cities that are capable of hosting events of this size. And we certainly know that Esri's had a great experience all these years in this town, so we're excited to check it out.